talked on the phone, it was mostly just, what's your favorite route to throw? How do you like to throw this route? This signal is for this play. This is the code word for that play. Things of that nature.
Today's Friday, November 2nd. This is the Cowboys Beat on CLNS Media. I'm Ari Temkin along with Patrick Conn. And we've got a lot to get to today. The Cowboys will finally play a football game on Monday. It feels like, Patrick, they haven't played, in like years. It feels like it's been a long time since the Dallas Cowboys have played a football game.
At least 6 weeks is what it feels like.
At least 6 weeks. In fact, during the Cowboys media availability today, somebody asked Amari Cooper if it felt like he was traded 10 days ago. And he basically said, it feels like it's been 10 days, if that's as long as it's been. I really like Amari Cooper. He cracks me up. We'll hear what Amari Cooper said during his media availability, but it's funny. I was saying this earlier. I heard the perception of him was he's so soft spoken in a sense, and he's not really outward with the media. And it almost comes off as condescending or like arrogance. And I totally got that after the media availability. And to be quite honest, I don't think that's the truth, but it was just the perception that he gives off. But I just think he's sort of, he's a deep thinker. I just don't get the perception that he's not answering questions or diminishing questions because he's arrogant about it. I just think that's his personality. He's just very reserved, more of introspective, I think. But it's funny because, traditionally in the locker room, if Dak Prescott does like a press conference, there's like a period after the press conference where the media will hang out and talk, and like shoot the breeze, right? So it's like a press conference part 2, So that same thing happened with Cooper today, and he's like, so is this still an interview, or? It was funny. Clarence Hill was like, oh, no, we're just talking. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. And he was talking about Alabama and LSU and all these other things. So, Patrick, on Twitter at Draft Cowboys, I am on Twitter at Ari Sports. This week, the trade deadline, and, Golden Tate goes to the Eagles for a third-round pick. Demaryius Thomas goes to the Texans for a fourth-round pick. And, Cowboys Twitter went sort of up in arms about, oh, my God, the Cowboys gave up a first-round pick for Cooper, and they could have had Demaryius Thomas for a fourth or Golden Tate for a third. And, it was so unreasonable for people to overreact to other moves when, the Amari Cooper trade, did they give up a lot? Yeah, but, I wouldn't compare that trade to Golden Tate or Demaryius Thomas.
Cowboys Twitter overreacted?
You can't believe it, can you?
No.
It's shocking.
No. Breaking news on the Cowboys Beat podcast.
Cowboys Twitter overreacts.
And that's honestly, and I think you kind of agree with me here, when anytime that the Dallas Cowboys are involved, there's going to be overreaction either way you go.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Oh, the Cowboys lost the draft, or not draft, I'm sorry. The Cowboys lost the trade because, the Eagles spent a third-round pick. The funny thing is everybody keeps wanting to go back to, well, the Cowboys give up a first. What they should have tried to do is a second. Well, the Eagles tried a second for Amari Cooper. They obviously like Amari Cooper. They lost on the Amari Cooper sweepstakes, so what do? They go and get Golden Tate. He's a good player, don't get me wrong, but he is not a focal point of the offense. He is a second and third option.
Totally. He's also 31 and in a contract year.
Absolutely. And the funny thing with Golden Tate is he goes to the Eagles who, for most of us, Cowboy fans, they hate the Eagles and they hate Golden Tate. So it's kind of a match made in heaven for that, and fans will remind you, they have not forgot about that cheap shot that he put on Sean Lee, the beloved son of Dallas Cowboy fans.
But he's 31. He's in a contract year, and like you said, he's a complimentary guy. He's not a number one. The Eagles have a number one. That's Alshon Jeffrey, and same with the Texans. They have DeAndre Hopkins, and so they bring in Demaryius Thomas to complement him. And look, I was a proponent, of bringing Demaryius Thomas to the Cowboys because I figured, they could have him for a late round pick. But Amari Cooper's 24 years old. he still it's very much, that he could be on his way up. Now there's a chance he's not, and that he's already played his best football. But I mean, I like the move the Cowboys made because they're willing to make it, and I think as we discussed last week, it puts sort of everybody's cards on the table, and it leaves no excuses for this organization if things go south this season. They've got all their cards on the table, and they're ready to go. And if things don't go well, I'm standing firm on this. I believe they're going to fire Jason Garrett.
And I'm going to fight you the whole way.
I know, but I know you don't want them to keep Jason Garrett.
No,
it'll work out well if they don't.
Right, absolutely. And then we can have that discussion, later on, in the season. I mean, if they come out and lose against the Texans, we might start having that conversation. Or I'm sorry, the Titans. If they lose to the Titans on Monday night, we might start that conversation a little bit earlier.
No kidding. The other move that was made, obviously, other than the Amari Cooper trade throughout the bye week, was Paul Alexander is out. Longtime Bengals offensive line coach who essentially comes to the Cowboys in sort of a trade, if you will, because Frank Pollock, the Cowboys' former offensive line coach, is now in Cincinnati, and so they bring in Paul Alexander, and I heard from the start that Paul Alexander was changing the technique of their players, and I guess I just didn't believe it because it seemed so ridiculous. Like, why would you do that? You've got an all-pro offensive line. Why'd you change the technique? Well, as it turns out, that is what happened. So they decided to make Paul Alexander expendable. They make the announcement that they've fired him. Mark Colombo, who's been on staff for the last 3 years, takes over as the offensive line coach. They bring back longtime Cowboys assistant offensive line coach in Hudson Houck to be sort of his assistant. I guess, what did you think of the move overall, Patrick?
It was a move that I was, really harping on for the last few weeks. Like you said, he comes in and he changes technique, and I know that it's something that you were kind of like, well, I don't quite understand that. And it's the way that they did things in Cincinnati, and and he had been there for 24 years, so they obviously felt that he was qualified to come in and teach these guys, and some took to it and some didn't. The big problem is what the one guy, and it was something that if you listen to Brian Broaddus at all, who writes for DallasCowboys.com, he said that many players said the one guy that was going to struggle was going to be La'el Collins. And so I went back and I started looking at some of the all-22 tape, and I focused really on La'el Collins. And it wasn't every time, every snap, but there were occasions where La'el Collins, when he's going into his set, he's playing with what they call a catch technique. And essentially what that means is you allow the defender to come into you, and then you try to really hold them. As they say, catch. But hold your block. Low hands, as you may have heard time and time again, they're talking about, hand placement.
Yes.
The thing that La'el Collins does well, you have to think about it. This guy is a mauler. So last year when they were playing under Frank Pollock, the thing that La'el was doing was punching. He's attacking the defender. He's trying to knock him off. You start with your punch and then you go in, and try and get your hands inside on him and really just drive them. Or on passing downs or passing situations, you really want what they call set on them, and that's where you anchor down. I mean, you let the guy come, you absorb them in, but you get your hands on them and you just hold them there long enough for the play to go either way. That's not an every time, because there are times where he's pulling or what have you. But that was something I noticed is when he's doing the catch technique is really where he struggled. His hand placement was bad, or you get his hands outside of the player, get called for a penalty. So that was some things that he struggled with. And, going back to what Broaddus said, they said that he was going to be the one guy that struggled. I don't think it's so much factored into what was going on with Tyron. I think a lot of his has to do with age and dealing with the injuries that have really accumulated over the years, dealing with the back issues. So, those were going to be issues. But it wasn't so much like that with La'el. I think La'el is the one guy that it really hurt. And Jerry Jones finally made a move. And he said, okay, this is not the right fit. Let's get this guy out of here. Let's, Mark Colombo, who was a guy who was up for the job in the offseason.
But that's what I don't get. Why didn't they just hire him?
I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that they looked around at some of the assistants they were bringing in, promoting. They lose Eberflus. He becomes the defensive coordinator up in Indianapolis. They're bringing in Sanjay Lal to replace Dooley, who goes to he goes to Missouri to be offense coordinator. They make Kellen Moore the quarterback coach for his first job in the NFL. So I think there was some I'm not going to say inexperienced, but there were some very green coaches, and maybe they felt that they needed a more experienced coach to be the offensive line coach. So that was quite interesting about that.
Yeah, no, I that's a great observation, and I mean, I think like Lyle Collins was struggling. They've had issues of consistency along their offensive line, but I'd say it's no surprise that their biggest issue among their offensive line was Lyle Collins. And I mean, at least there should be some optimism now that it's like, well, they've got this issue fixed. But at the same time, it's like it just seems like such a self-inflicted wound. When you're interviewing this guy, and Jason Garrett, you have to be like, hey, so they're really good. You're not gonna change anything major, right? We're just gonna go with the flow here. Yeah, it just seems so counterintuitive. It seems so ridiculous to have a coach come in and Sanjay Lal came in and kind of changed things in a big way, but that's necessary, right? It's not like they had an all-pro receiving corps. They had a bunch of 2s and 3s, so it made sense to have a guy that would teach them technique and teach them routes and sort of start at this baseline. But to do that along the offensive line, it seems so ridiculous. And for them to waste half the season on this ridiculous other technique when, it's supposed to be the strength of your team, it seems like, why did it take so long? All right, he's Patrick Conn. I'm Ari Temkin. This is the Cowboys Beat on CLNS Media. All right, coming up in a little bit, we will discuss the quarterback situation and should the Cowboys look at drafting a quarterback, especially now that they don't have a first-round draft pick. We'll get into that coming up. But now let's hear from Amari Cooper, the Cowboys' newest wide receiver, and what he had to say to the media yesterday during his availability. All right, it's Ari Temkin, and I've got to tell you about The Athletic. The future of sports journalism is here. Have you subscribed to The Athletic yet? What are you waiting for? The other day I read this amazing piece from the great college football writer Bruce Feldman, who was doing an oral history of that legendary OU Texas Tech football game from a couple of years ago, the 66-59 finish between Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield. But for Dallas, for DFW Sports, you kidding me? They've got Bob Sturm and Jeff Kavanaugh and Calvin Watkins and Levi Weaver covering the Rangers. And it's an unbelievable grouping of the best sports writers, sports opinion makers, giving you in-depth opinions, in-depth breakdown of the Cowboys. If you are looking to get informed, to get the best information on the Cowboys on DFW Sports, go to theathletic.com/Cowboys Beat. What's important is to go to theathletic.com/Cowboys Beat, because when you use that link, you're going to get 40% off the subscription. That means $2.99 per month to get access to thousands of articles, not just in DFW sports, but nationally as well, with great national sports writers for the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NFL, college football. The Athletic has brought all of the greatest sports writers, sports commentators in, and it is. There's no pop-ups, there's no automatic start videos, there's no advertising. It's just the great breakdowns and analysis that you want and crave. You're a big-time sports fan, you're listening to this podcast, go to theathletic.com/Cowboys Beat. Again, theathletic.com/Cowboys Beat. The Athletic, a subscription-based publisher of smarter sports coverage for diehard fans. Theathletic.com/Cowboys Beat. Go there, theathletic.com/Cowboys Beat. Subscribe and be a part of the future of sports journalism.
I know you had to go back to Oakland to take care of some things personally, just handling that and also working with Sanjay, kind of what you did while you were there to get ready to come back here.
Yeah, so when I went back, I had to gather my things and, that type of stuff. But I got a chance to work with Sanjay because, coincidentally, he had to go down there at the same time. and we just walk through the plays and stuff like that every day.
Did you just go to a park close to you and spend some time there, or kind of how did it? Where did you go and what did you do?
Yeah, we went to a park close to me called Fallon Sports Park, and we just walked through the plays.
Were people looking at you, going, "What's going on out there?" Or?
No, we got there kind of early, so there wasn't many people there.
What's your impression of this receiving core?
I like them. They're really diligent. That's my first impression. Hard workers, man.
How much have you picked up?
Picked up a lot so far. It's it's not a bad translation. It's easy to translate what I did in Oakland here.
So you feel you did enough to make an immediate impact on Monday?
Man, that's a good question. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Coach Garrett said that you and Dak were able to get a little bit of FaceTime, things like that.
Right.
Just where are you guys together right now in terms of getting on the same page?
Right. I mean, we've been talking, obviously, trying to catch up on some things. I would say where our feet are, So that's all I can say on that.
How do you build
What can you do on FaceTime?
What's that?
What can you do on FaceTime?
Talk about the plays.
Just talk about the plays.
Yeah.
You on the same page with that?
Yeah.
Did y'all do anything once you got back here on the field, like I don't know, if you had Monday or Tuesday or what?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we've been doing that ever since we've been back. When we talked on the phone, it was mostly just, what's your favorite route to throw? How do you like to throw this route? This signal is for this play. This is the code word for that play. Things of that nature.
When did you get back? Monday?
Monday or Tuesday, I don't remember.
How would you describe
Tuesday, I believe.
How would you describe to somebody how to build a rapport? If you're a wide receiver, how do you build a rapport with a new quarterback?
All the small things matter. The communication. You have to just be on the same page, I would say. It doesn't matter what you're doing, you have to be on the same page.
Amari, Jason Garrett said he reached out to Coach Saban specifically about you and he raved about you. What has Coach Saban meant to you? What kind of a leader and mentor has he been in your process, and what does he mean to you?
Yeah, he's been a great mentor and a great leader, great coach to me. He's gave me some of the best advice of my life. Helped me through some hard times, and he's just a great guy.
How much do you feel like you have to utilize every minute? Like you're sitting around for a minute, you're not getting ready for this transition?
There's definitely a sense of urgency, being that I just got here and we have to play this week. I have to go out there and play on Monday, and it's a completely new system. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's football. I played in a couple of different systems now, so after a while, you're really doing some of the same things. They just call it something different.
Any feelings of any pressure having to make an impact quickly? Obviously, they get a lot for you. They're putting you out there early. You're going to play a lot on Monday. You feel any pressure you got to produce early?
No, I don't feel any pressure.
Why is that? Just because you're confident in what you can do and everything you've done, or?
Why feel pressure when you can apply it? So that's my take on that.
How much can Ezekiel Elliott, kind of getting back to how he's ran the ball well, how much can that help you on the outside?
Helps me a lot. Helps the passing game, the receivers a lot because, if he's running hard, he's running well, obviously they'll have to put an extra man in the box and it kind of frees us up.
I like the trade, obviously, and I think we both do, and I think a lot of Cowboys fans have come around on it. But the one thing that I said about it was, I don't like the trade if they're trying to take a quarterback in the first round, because, you took a look at the stat, but 70% of starting quarterbacks are first round draft picks. That doesn't include Drew Brees, who was the first pick of the second round. So, you're basically looking at over 70% of starting quarterbacks are within the first 33 picks. So, if the Cowboys have questions about whether or not Dak Prescott's the guy, then they probably need to at some point invest a first-round pick in a quarterback. So that's the reason I didn't really like the Amari Cooper trade was, well, if they're going to take a quarterback, now that sort of takes them away from that. Because, again, you're most likely to find your guy if you're drafting him in the first round. So, I guess the question is, should they, without a first-round pick, take a quarterback in the 2019 draft?
Well, if I have a theory on drafting quarterbacks, and it's something that we've talked about in the past. My theory is take a quarterback every year, and I'm not saying every year's got to be high. Take a late rounder, kind of like they did with Mike White. And do that each year, because you never know when you could luck into the next Tom Brady or luck into a Russell Wilson, things of that nature. I mean, they lucked into Dak Prescott.
Sure. In the short term.
In the short term, because, the common rule, is that when your starting quarterback goes down, your season's over. That's typically the way it seems, because backup quarterbacks are backups for a reason.
Yeah.
They're a short-term fix. They're not a long-term answer. Tom Moore had a quote many years ago that I absolutely loved and believed it 100%. And
long-time offensive coordinator for the Colts, along with Peyton Manning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the question was, they asked Tom Moore, why don't you let the backups get any snaps over 18? And he said, look, if 18 goes down, we're screwed. And we don't practice screwed. I'm paraphrasing there. I'm not going to use the actual word that I'm sure you can figure out what he said.
Yes.
But it's true. I mean, that's why they don't really give backups many reps in practice, because you need your starter to get all those reps.
Yeah, those reps, right.
But it was like this perfect storm that just happened for Dak Prescott. I mean, it's not even just the Tony Romo injury. Like, Kellen Moore had to break his foot so he could get elevated in the depth chart.
Yeah.
If he doesn't break his foot, then Kellen Moore is starting those games, and we saw Kellen Moore.
The next NFL game Kellen Moore wins will be his first. No,
absolutely.
I guess I don't disagree with what you're saying about you should take a quarterback every year. The problem is, so let's just say the Cowboys take a 5th or a 6th round pick next year as a quarterback. What do you do with Mike White then? What do you do every year when you're not sure and you haven't really gotten a fair shake of what these guys look like? I mean, if you're constantly cycling in new quarterbacks, you obviously don't want to keep everyone in the 53.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of creates a logjam that and then you're not even really getting a fair look at any of these guys. And so even if you have the next Russell Wilson or Tom Brady, you might not even know, because they never even get the chance to prove it.
Well, to go onto that, I agree with you to a point on that. I mean, you do create a logjam, but a lot of times they're going to bring in camp arms. Mm-hmm. But there's also the question: is Cooper Rush the right backup quarterback?
No, he's probably not.
Now, last year we thought he was great.
Right.
You saw him in preseason, and then this season, not so much. So it's like, not only did Dak regress, but it kind of seemed like Cooper did as well.
Yeah.
So I get that, but what I mean is,
take some flyers. I mean,
take some flyers on some guys.
It's an important position, and you can obviously get basically lottery tickets if you land one. The thing for me in the 2019 draft is I would say don't take a quarterback, because I think there's too many other positions that need to be fulfilled. I mean, we can go through them, but I mean, obviously they need to take a look at a tight end and an offensive lineman, probably with their 2nd round pick. Mm-hmm. And then I'm totally for just take a bunch of safeties and corners, and I mean, just load up and try and hit on those guys. For me, I think they're in position now to where they have to take a quarterback in 2020. And the reason I say that in the first round of 2020, the reason I say that is because, look, Amari Cooper's going to make Dak Prescott a better quarterback. He's going to. Because if he doesn't, then Dak is assuredly not the guy.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the thing is, you don't pay $100 million to a guy that needs everything to be perfect around them in order for them to be successful. And, for me, Russell Wilson's this great example of it. I mean, they don't have a really good offensive line, although it's played much better since, of late. They don't have great receivers. They don't even have a great running game. And yet they're 4-3, and Russell Wilson's playing great. That's a $100 million quarterback. And look, it's unfair to compare these two because, Russell Wilson's farther along in his development than is a Dak Prescott. But the clock is ticking for the Cowboys to have to make a decision long term on him, and you just can't pay $100 million to a guy that needs everything to be perfect around them. At some point, you need a quarterback that can overcompensate for the ineffectiveness at other parts of the field, and that's the guy you pay $100 million for. Because when 50% of your salary cap's going to one player, that guy needs to be able to lift up your team well above what they are when you have talent deficiencies all around the football.
Well, I will say, and I agree with you. You wanted to compare there. I know it wasn't really a fair comparison, but you're talking about Russell Wilson versus Dak Prescott and, things that they can do. I would say Russell Wilson is a passer. Dak Prescott is a thrower.
What's the difference?
The difference being that a passer, to me, can throw with anticipation. It makes the guys around him better. Whereas I don't see that same level of touch with Dak Prescott. He's kind of just throwing to a point. You're not really anticipating where the route's going, where the defender's going. I just don't see that touch with him. And so when I look at Dak, like I said, I think he's a thrower. Like, he has to throw to an open guy. Guy has to create space for him to throw it to him. Occasionally you see those tight window throws. And I will say, I love the NFL Next Gen stats, but the stat that keeps being thrown around a lot, which bothers me a little bit, is these tight window throws. And I would tell you this, from watching Dak Prescott, he creates a lot of tight window throws. And so, like with a Russell Wilson, he makes those tight window throws pretty regularly. And it's like, Dak Prescott may have a lot of them, but, it's just not at the same level. And that's nothing to do, yes, it is to do with Dak Prescott, but that's not a knock on him. He's just not that type of player. And you're right. A guy that has to have everything perfect, much like 2016, the elite offensive line, the elite running game, everything was perfect for him that year. And when it's not perfect, and that's where things start to break down. And I think that's why they made the change at the offensive line coach, because they noticed this wasn't a good situation for Dak Prescott. But to go back to what we were talking about, addressing the quarterback, this isn't the year. The big name, and nobody even knows if he's coming out, is Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
His brother's going to Oregon, going to enroll, so maybe he wants to be there with his brother, stay one more year. Right now it's looking like, it looks like New York's going to be, right up there. Do I really want to go to New York, play behind that offensive line? I mean, I'm not saying that was going through his head, but it would go through mine. So that's the big name. Behind him, you got Drew Lock. If you go look at his stuff, I mean, he seems like he would be a good quarterback prospect. The problem is when there's a rise in competition, his numbers fall pretty significantly.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of questions there. Now, 2020, you got Tua, Jake Fromm, Jacob Eason, who was at Georgia, transferred to Washington. He's going to be in there. I mean, there's going to be a longer list of top-tier quarterbacks if you really want to go that route. Second round is when the Cowboys are first going to come on the clock. Do I want to take a quarterback in the second round? Well, as I've stated time and time again, your top 3 rounds have got to be starters. If I take a quarterback there, he's not going to be starting. And you look around this offense, or not just offense, you look around this team, what do you need? Well, I need a safety. So if I can't sign an Earl Thomas to a relatively good deal for the team, that's an issue. So you're going to need a safety. I'm pretty good at corner right now, so I'm not worried about that in the second round. I need a tight end.
Yeah.
I need a swing tackle. I could possibly need a center. Don't know about Travis Frederick. I mean, we think that he's going to be ready to go next year, but that whole
right. No, might need a left tackle.
You might. Well, yeah. I mean, if he's not able to go, I mean, because as we know, backs don't get better. Ask Tony Romo.
Yeah.
Backs don't get better. Eventually they're going to give out on you. It's only, it's almost like a ticking time bomb. So there's positions that you need. I still think the Dallas Cowboys need a pass rusher. And the reason why I say that is DeMarcus Lawrence is doing his job. people will complain about numbers and go, he hadn't had a sack in 3 games. Yeah, but he's doing his job. He's getting in the backfield. He's creating disruption. He's getting tackles for loss. I think the sacks will come.
Yeah.
But he needs some help on that weak side. Taco Charlton, he's kind of up and down. I mean, some weeks where you see glimpses, you see flashes, and other weeks he disappears. Honestly, I'll tell you the second best pass rusher on this defense that I've seen, and I think it's Dorrance Armstrong. He's a guy who...
Rookie out of Kansas.
Yeah, the rookie out of Kansas. He was a guy I really liked him early on. He fell in the draft to the 4th round. I thought he was a 2nd-round pick, when I first watched him. But I think he had some injury issues which kind of dropped him down. But, he's kind of been playing behind DeMarcus. But I honestly think that if they wanted to go with their 2 best pass rushers on the ends, I will pound the table for a little more Armstrong getting some more snaps, because I'm not seeing it out of Taco. Maybe if he played inside, maybe he's better. He would be a better inside. He's really been working on that spin move. I mean, we see it time and time again. And I mean, sometimes he wins, but I'm just not seeing that consistency from him. Randy Gregory can't stay on the field, whether it's suspensions or knee issues. Tyron Crawford is good, but he's also good inside. And with David Irving, he may not be there next year because he'll be a free agent. Yeah. So what do you do there?
No, you're right. Pass rusher now is suddenly a need too.
Yeah, and so I'm looking at pass rusher going, I kind of could use one. I don't think DeMarcus Lawrence is going anywhere. I think he's a Cowboy next year.
But then who rushes from the right side? I mean, it's not just about one guy.
Exactly. And that's where you also need a pass rusher from that side to help DeMarcus Lawrence, to take some of that pressure off of him, or to take pressure off the guys in the middle. And even going and talking about the guys in the middle, with, and now his name escapes me, the defensive tackle from Nebraska.
Malik Collins.
I don't know why I can never remember that guy's. I have a lot of injury concerns with that guy because he seems like he's always hurt. So do I look at a defensive tackle? They probably could use one or two.
So probably not a quarterback in the draft.
It's probably not going to be a quarterback. I mean, like I was saying, there's so many things that I'm looking around going, okay, but if I had to put my top 3 right now, my top 3 is a tight end at number 1. And then I'll go with, like a swing tackle and a pass rusher. It'll be my top 3 right now.
Yeah, hard to disagree.
And I don't list safety there just because, to me, safety is just as hard to find as a quarterback.
Yeah. And probably better served in free agency, whether it's Earl Thomas or somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's Patrick Conn on Twitter at Draft Cowboys. Make sure to check out what he's doing. Great work with us over here at the Cowboys Beat. Also pretty soon on Phantom at facebook.com/Watch Phantom, and writing fantastic articles for WFAA. Check him out again at Draft Cowboys. I'm Ari Temkin. It's the Cowboys Beat for CLNS Media. You can catch me as part of the Dallas Cowboys pre- and post-game show on 105.3 The Fan with Jesse Holly as we're getting ready Monday night for Tennessee and the Cowboys, which we'll talk about next week. We'll finally have a game to talk about next week. Plus, Jerry's big announcement. All of that coming up next week on the Cowboys Beat. But for now, we're out. Peace. 30 minutes goes fast.
Yeah, it does. I was like, we didn't even get to talk about the game.
I know. I was thinking about that too, but it's all good because I'm gonna have to cut some of it, but I didn't, a lot of it I didn't want to cut, so I was like, well, we'll just keep rolling and not talk about the game. It's all good.